Hi, Verbling. My name's Michaela. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And today we're talking about the TOEFL exam. If you guys have any comments or questions on this class, you can message me on Facebook or on Verbling. Martin, welcome to class.
Hi,
How
thanks
are
very
you?
much. How are you? Very good, thanks. Not bad.
I'm doing really well also. Did you change
Wonderful.
your picture or are you a new student?
No, I'm a new student with you.
Okay.
I've never been in your class.
Okay, well, it's very nice to meet you. Where are you from?
Nice to meet you too. I'm from Italy.
Cool.
Yes, depends.
Ah, what part of Italy are you from?
In northern Italy, in the middle of the Dolomiti Mountains, in the Trentino, if you know.
Ooh. hmm I
Yeah,
lived in Torino for a year,
yeah, and
so
Torino
I
is
know
in
a
the
little bit about the geography. Not a ton, but a little.
Torino. It should be about 3 hours from my place. 3 hours
Ah,
drive. Yeah, it's
nice.
not so far anyway.
All right, so today we're talking about the TOEFL. Do you
Yep.
intend to take the TOEFL or have you already taken the TOEFL?
No, I have already taken the IELTS test, so
Ooh.
I think the TOEFL test is not so different from the IELTS.
Possibly. So tell me about your experience with the IELTS.
It's so tough, not so easy. Absolutely,
It
it's really
is.
hard. Yeah.
hmm
But anyway, everything is possible. So I think
Yeah,
I hope to obtain a better score the next time.
I see. So do you have a particular motivation for taking these tests,
Yeah,
or do
for
you just go ahead?
yeah for immigration purposes.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I need
So,
the IELTS general training test.
mm, and you're planning on immigrating to somewhere in Europe, the
Yeah, to
UK?
Australia.
Oh, wow, far.
Yeah, so far from Italy. Yeah, I know.
What will you
I've
be doing in Australia?
I've already spent 1 year in Australia in 2013. Uh, I did like so much the country, the way to live there, and all the stuff. So I hope to go back there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, will the TOEFL be part of that process? You need both, the IELTS and the TOEFL?
Oh, I can choose between the IELTS and TOEFL. So
Ah, I see.
I I'd like to know some information about the TOEFL because I know so much about that.
Mm-hmm.
My experience my experience was on the IELTS test. So with the TOEFL, I don't know so much. So this is why I'm here with you.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
the good news is usually people who like one test kind of hate the other test. So for people who have taken both, they'll say the TOEFL was way easier or the IELTS was way easier. So if you didn't really like the experience with the IELTS, then maybe the TOEFL is the test for you.
Oh, maybe why not? Now I'm here just for information to pick up
Great.
some new information about the TOEFL test.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's start with some speaking prompts. I'm going to ask you or give you a speaking prompt, and in the actual TOEFL exam, you would get like 15 or 20 seconds to think about your answer and then respond. Are you ready?
All right. I'm ready.
Okay. Name a famous or influential figure who has inspired you. Describe this person and say why he or she has been inspirational to you. And go. So, what do you
So
think?
I like to talk about a sportman, a really famous one. It was called Marco Pantani. It was the a cyclist. Sorry, it was the cyclist. So for me, he has been a good example of the power of the mind. not just the power of the physical power, but the power of the mind too, because he he jump over the difficulty, he jump over the accident, the troubles, and everything. So he became a champion for his sport.
Awesome. All right. So there are a lot of those kinds of practice prompts for the speaking part, and I put a link in the chat box for you
Yeah.
so that if you would like to practice those later with a
Mm-hmm.
friend, asking the questions, you can. And some of them are awesome, some of them are really easy to respond to, and other ones are like, what? Um,
Yeah.
so it's partly just luck on
Ah,
which
so
prompt you
useful.
get.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, so useful, I think. Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoy it. Okay, so we're also going to be looking over a document today that I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to put in the chat box for you as well. And this is a lot of information on the TOEFL exam. It just gives you some of the general information, like how long each section is, what they include. It also has a lot of prompts, like practice example questions and that kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
Most of this we went over last class, so some of it we're going to breeze through a little bit, but since you have it there, you'll probably be able to look through it at your leisure later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. And
Looks
hopefully,
so similar to the IELTS test.
yeah. So what is the IELTS test like? I'm less familiar with that exam.
There is a time uh, around 40 minutes for the listening test. Just 40 minutes. No, I'm seeing here 60 to 90. No, it's shorter than IELTS test. It's just 40 minutes for the listening test, and
Mm-hmm.
then without any stops, without any breaks, nothing. The 1 hour for the reading test, pretty much the
Wow.
same as the TOEFL here.
Mm-hmm.
And without any stop, we have a writing test, which which leads 1 hour in total. Yeah, we have two essays to write. One is one. The first one 20 minutes, and the second one 40 minutes. So 1 hour in total, the writing test.
Mm.
And then in a different place, even in the different day, we have the speaking test. And the duration of the speaking test is around 20 minutes, from 15 to 20.
Okay, so it looks similar to how the TOEFL is set up, except that you have the interview on a different day.
Yeah, exactly. What about the
Okay.
TOEFL? It is in the same day, the
Yes.
speaking.
Yes. I believe it's all together, but it depends on what type you're taking also. Most of the time, the only option is the internet-based test. But there's
Hmm.
also an in-person test. And I believe that both of them are done completely on one day in a testing center. So you won't have a second day to return for the interview. It'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
all on one day.
This is a positive thing. Absolutely.
Really? You don't think it was beneficial to break it up?
No, 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 no. For me, no. It's just a way to increase your panic,
Yeah.
your panic. Probably, I think, in my opinion. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably more convenient to get it all out of the way on one day.
Maybe even cheaper, because maybe you have to go back home and come back another day, maybe spend.
Hmm.
If you are far from the test center, you have to pay for the accommodation, the hotel
Hmm.
or something. Maybe much better
Hmm.
spend just
Definitely.
one day and finish. That's it.
Yeah. So with the TOEFL, there's the two kinds. There's the paper-based test and the internet-based test, and usually there's only one offered in a particular country or city. So sometimes You can like drive to, if you want a specific kind, you can drive to another location. But most of the
Mhm.
time, you really just have one option. So the first thing you might want to find out is which one is offered in your area.
Hmm. How many kind of TOEFL tests there are?
There, as far as I know, there's just the two. There's the paper-based, which would be a paper test where you mark all your answers down, and then they have an interview with a
Hmm.
person,
Yeah.
and they grade you on that. And then the internet-based is similar, but you do it all on a computer, and the speaking is speaking into a microphone versus talking to an actual person.
Ah, hmm. Interesting.
Which do you think you'd prefer? Some people prefer talking to a real person, and others are a little shy, maybe want to avoid eye to eye
No,
contact. They prefer the microphone.
no, I'm without any doubt. I prefer talk with a real person in front of me because maybe if you talk through the microphone, maybe there are some noisy in the background or
Mm.
yeah, I prefer talk with the real person.
All right. Well, then
Maybe
maybe.
another point, another positive point I think is that I can see the expression of the person who
Mm-hmm.
is talking with me. So if I see a good face, if I see a smile or or a laugh, a little laugh, maybe I can increase my motivation, increase my yeah, just my motivation. If I see a good
Uh-huh.
expression, a good face, a smile, or something similar.
Yeah, that could be
It's
encouraging. You're right.
encouraging, yeah, exactly, encouraging.
All right. So, a couple notes on the next page. Um, the TOEFL only accepts American English spelling, not British English spelling.
Hmm.
So, if you use words and you spell them the British way, they will be counted as incorrectly spelled, and that will mark
Ooh,
off points.
not
Yes.
good, not good.
No, no, but there's
No,
really
I'm
only a
joking.
few main categories of words that are spelled differently. Can you think of anything that's spelled differently between British and English in America? Oh, oh no, what happened? Lost the student. All right. Well, if you are still out there watching, we will go over a couple of the categories of words. So, and for anyone else also, there's OR versus OUR in words like favorite and flavor and things like that. And I'll put these in the chat box. And then there's the RE versus ER, center with an RE, the British, and center with an ER, the American. You can find a lot more information on these categories on Wikipedia, and there's plenty of lists that will just break down like all the words in American and British spelling. We went over this in more detail last class. Hey there, Akka. Hey there, how are you?
Yes, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Doing well. I had a student for a minute
Mhm.
and he was awesome, but then he dropped off. So
Oh,
now it's just you
mhm.
and me.
I see. Yeah, I heard the voice. Yeah, I understood the voice on the video, on YouTube video. But yeah.
Yeah, he was a student intending to take the TOEFL exam
Mhm.
soon, and he was really interested. So I feel bad that maybe his internet connection failed
I
or
see.
something.
Mhm.
But since you're here and you were here in the last class as well, we
Mhm.
will skip ahead to the integrated
Okay,
writing that we
sure.
didn't quite
Hmm.
do last class. And I
Okay.
know that you're not really intending to take this TOEFL
Yeah,
exam in the future.
TOEFL. Yeah, but I'm interested in TOEFL. I took a lot of classes about TOEFL exam.
Hmm.
So I've never taken IBT, but I've practiced IBT in the class like this.
Interesting. All right. So, I might also make some notes that aren't necessarily for you, but mainly for other students because
Okay,
just
sure.
information other students might not know yet. And our Martin, you're back.
Yeah, teacher, sorry, I got a trouble with my connection, with my internet connection.
Oh, yeah, it
I'm
happens
so
to us
sorry.
all for sure. All right, so we were left talking about the notes on page number 2, how American and British English spellings can be different. And lots of those lists can be found online, as well as on Wikipedia. They'll break down the actual topics, like OR versus OUR, RE versus ER, things like that. So research can be done. We're going to skip ahead right now to the integrated writing, which is on page number 3, I think, and I'll screen share that for you. Okay, so we're skipping ahead to this part because I covered most of the material on this document in my last class. But for anyone who still needs to read that stuff over, you can read it over on your own time and let me know if you have any questions on Facebook or on Verbling. Okay, so for this integrated writing, I am going to read you guys an article and then we're going to talk a little bit about it. Before we read the article, I want to hear some strategies from you guys about how you will maximize your understanding as I'm speaking, because it can be difficult to take really academic words and then remember them all in your head while you're continuing to get more and more information. Anka, do you have any strategies for this integrated writing or for listening in general?
Uh, Maybe I forgot exactly, but maybe we cannot jot down on during the test.
You
Can
can't
I
jot
jot?
down during the integrated writing?
I mean, listen, especially in listening.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the rule. Can we jot down something or
I'm not
cannot?
sure about the listening, but I know that for the integrated writing, you can
Mm.
write notes as you're hearing the prompt. But for the integrated writing, sometimes you'll have something to read, sometimes it will be a listening prompt. So it's not
Mm.
always the same prompt they give you for the integrated writing, but for today's purposes, we are going to be doing the integrated writing with a
Mm.
listening prompt.
Mm. Okay.
All right. And I purposefully picked an article that I thought would be difficult and contain some words that most people would not know, just to challenge some people and because in the TOEFL as well as right now, a good way to practice is not necessarily to make sure you know every single word, but make sure that even when there are words that you don't understand, you still can overall understand major ideas in the exercise. All right. Any questions before we begin? All right. I'm going to read then, and the link is below for you, but for this particular exercise, I would not recommend reading along with me. It wouldn't be as accurate a practice, but you can if you want. All right. So, it's an article called Why Slather This Spinach Fields in Poop? It's All for Science. Kind of a funny one. So, why are these scientists in hazmat suits smiling? They're standing in a field that they are about to spread with raw manure. 4 different kinds of raw manure, to be exact. Michelle Ray Russell, a University of California, Davis food safety scientist, posted the above picture on Twitter last week with the tantalizing tagline, Day Zero, raw manure, fertilizer, and E. coli inoculum to be applied to fallow spinach fields. In a nutshell, Jay Russell and her team are trying to see how long E. coli in raw manure survives in the soil and how much gets onto leafy greens harvested months later. The experiment comes as the Food and Drug Administration is proposing a rule requiring many produce growers to wait 9 months between applying raw manure to a field and harvesting crops there. That's because the agency sees raw manure as a food safety risk. However, the proposal contradicts what the U.S. Department of Agriculture has said is okay for organic growers: 4 months between application and harvest. And that's got many small organic growers who are used to using cheap raw manure rather than more pricey treated manure pretty upset with the FDA, as you heard in our colleague Dan Charles's story. To see if 4 months is really long enough for the bad bacteria to die off, Jay Russell is setting up a growing site on UC Davis Field in Davis, California. We're kind of pretending we're an organic spinach grower, she says. First, the team went to the field to lay down the 4 kinds of manure: goat, dairy, horse, and chicken litter. Then the team sprayed the manure with an E. coli slurry in both high and low concentrations from the kind of backpack sprayers often used for pesticide applications. Now they measure and wait. We'll be collecting 40 samples a day. We'll be measuring the levels of the actual concentration of the bacteria. Then we'll plant the spinach in February and harvest in 8 weeks and test again, Jay Russell says. The team will set up a second trial in January and leave the manure for 9 months to test the FDA proposal. The experiments are being funded by grants from the USDA Specialty Crop Research Initiative and the University of California, Davis's FDA Center of Excellence. And they'll be published in the usual scientific way, first presented at a conference of scientists, then printed in a scholarly journal where only a few people will actually read it. But Jay Russell wants to make the experiment and the process of doing a science experiment more widely known to the public. Hence the Twitter updates from the field of manure that caught our eye. That's how science works, she says. Okay, so Martin is gone. Aka, what did you hear in that report?
A lot. It's a kind of proof, it's about, I couldn't understand what the manure is, but anyway, it sounds like fertilizer, and it's related to organic food, and FDA and many organic farmers use that right before the harvest. So FDA feel worried about that, and after that, the experiment was shown in the typical academic way, kind of post the academic journal or academic congress or something like that. However, maybe in that kind of presentation, ordinary people don't notice, even if they are the academically correct. So the scientists post about this on Twitter, and after that, this study, uh, you know, people began to be interested. Many people began to be interested in this about this study.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
that's what I
That's a
got.
yeah, that's a pretty good summary. And like I mentioned, I picked this particular article because I was pretty confident that there would be a lot of words that even very advanced students would not know. And I think that the TOEFL exam does that as well because what they do is they pick something that's really difficult. That way, even students that have a really high level don't get a perfect score. They want that perfect score to be something that really very, one in a million people get. They don't want to hand that out to everyone. So sometimes they pick difficult things. Do you remember what your integrated writing topic was?
What year in the article? It was written said in the article. Uh,
I'm sorry, what?
sorry, I couldn't get your question.
Do you remember what your integrated writing topics were?
I completely forgot because it I took that more than 5 years ago, so I completely
Oh, it's been
forgot.
a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe much more simple than this, probably compared with
Yeah.
IBT writing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, Martin, you can watch this class in my history if in getting all that information. And manure. So, no idea what manure is, right?
Yeah, it appeared a lot, but I couldn't get it.
It's easier to understand if you read it, I think, because the more you see the word used, the more it starts to make sense. Because at some point they said manure from 4 different types of
Mhm.
manure from cows, manure from chicken, manure from goats, and one other
That
kind that I forgot. So, what do you think a manure is? If it's coming from, it's a product of cows, chickens,
mm,
goats, animals.
proof? That
It's
means
poo. It's poop.
okay.
Yeah. So, it's kind of a funny topic. It's like
Mhm.
a scientific way to talk about poop.
Okay. I see. Mhm.
It's a very interesting article.
Mm,
Okay, so would you like to go more in depth with this article or just talk about other general test taking techniques? Or we could
mm,
do some
mm,
more oral
mm.
speaking questions if you like.
Okay. Yeah, maybe since it is online class, so maybe what one thing I cannot do is kind of oral practice alone. I need
That's true.
partner to practice. Yeah.
That's true. All right. So then, here we go. I'll ask you a couple more oral questions now.
Okay.
Um, Talk about an event from the past that you would
Mhm.
like to relive. Describe the original event and say why you would like to relive it.
Mhm. Sorry, I couldn't get the a correction.
All right. So, talk about an event from the past that you would like to relive. Describe the original event and say why you would like to relive it.
Ah, leave it. Yeah. Original when I leave, probably mm, I was born on the earth and my parents took care of me. I think that that was the original relief to me. Maybe that's a reliable feeling based on the human mind. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So What event would you like to relive?
Event, yeah. Uh, Sometimes my parents, yeah, typical event. In Japan, 3, 6, 7 years kids go to shrine and usually pray for the kind of for the good luck or good health. And that event is fun for me because we can wear the kind of gorgeous uh, clothes than usual, and we can get candy actually after
Oh,
the
very
ceremony.
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of thing, that this kind of memory, yeah, uh, could be the original event which made me relieve.
All right. So you'd like to relive the happiness of childhood?
Hmm. I think so.
Very
Yeah.
nice. All right. Let's do one more of these.
Mhm.
Where would you most like to live? Describe this place and explain why you would like to live there.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd like to live in Japan because I'm very familiar with lifestyle here, and I was born here and I grew up here. So now the best place to live in Japan, and I can get I speak Japanese fluently, and maybe I can get a job easier than in America or some other countries. Oh, yeah, in these reasons, I think living in Japan is the best for me now. I'm not sure in the future, but yeah.
So your ideal place to live is the place you're living. That's nice, right?
Yes. Yes.
Very cool. All right. I looked up a couple new prompts that I think will be more difficult.
Hmm.
So let's try this one.
Okay.
Talk about a situation which enabled you to realize you had a certain strength or weakness that you didn't know about before and how you dealt with this new finding.
Mm.
I'll put it in the chat box too because it's
Okay.
complex.
Where do you to realize you have- Yeah, I think now I'm facing a situation enable me to realize certain strengths or weakness to talk in English to in TOEFL style. You know, actually, not in usual conversation, people don't check so much about my talking. But in this kind of class or practice, teacher check me my English sentence, and I noticed I have a listening problem, weak point, and however I could summarize that article in my own way. It could be a strength.
Excellent. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Everyone has their own things that they find easy and things they find more difficult. But of
Mhm.
all of the students on Verbling, I think you're definitely in a higher group of people who are very
Mhm.
capable of talking in conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that's because of so much experience you've had,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You lived in the
Yeah.
US for many years, right?
Yeah. Just for 6 months. So, but
Huh.
it was a very good experience, and it good experience not only for English but also the living abroad. You know, I realized how foreigner live in Japan. How does they feel? You know, in America I was a foreigner, so kind of I've never experienced such kind of situation. So it's pretty good experience.
What are some of the biggest cultural differences between Japanese
Mhm.
living in a Japanese city
Mhm.
versus living in an American city?
Mm, Big difference. Talking about modern life, actually, building or concrete buildings, such kind of things, not so many different, but still we keep our tradition, we get off the shoes inside the house. So actually, I was too familiar with this. I always get put off the shoes when I came back to my dormitory room. And my roommates was wearing sandals, but I put off the shoes and I walking around the room barefoot. So it could be strange for another roommate, but kind of one difference between America and Japan. Yeah.
Very cool. That's an interesting traditional difference.
Yeah,
And
kind of.
Japan has this strong culture of tradition, right?
Yeah, because Japan is kind of it's isolated continent, and 300 years samurai government closed the nation. At that time, not so many foreigner could come to Japan. So in these 300 years, maybe we created a very kind of strong sense of Japaneseness, but it also connects to the exclusiveness for foreigners. So which I don't like it about Japanese society.
All right, very interesting. And I've also heard a little bit about the Japanese language and how it's
Mhm,
like super, super different. And I can't even
mhm,
imagine. I've heard things like
mhm,
there's not really common words for yes and
mhm,
no,
mhm,
and that I forget. There is so many things I've
mhm,
heard that I'm not
mhm,
sure if they're true, but they sound like
mhm,
unimaginable to me.
mhm. Yeah, English spelling is pretty much irregular, and the complexity of Japanese, yeah, probably writing system is pretty complicated. We applied Chinese characters into Japanese writing, and then we developed two different style of letters. So you need to memorize not only the Chinese characters, but also the proper combination of how to use the Chinese characters and other two different Chinese, no, sorry, Japanese letters. Very
Complex.
complex. Yeah, very complex.
And what about dictionaries? Dictionaries are
Mhm.
organized differently, right? Because of the characters.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
no like alphabetical order, right?
Uh, yes. So dictionary orders in accordance with Japanese alphabet. I mean Japanese letters order.
Ah, there's
So
a
at
specific
least,
order they
yeah,
always go in.
right. So at least Japanese has letters, so we can describe the words in the phonetically too. Not so
Ah, okay.
yeah.
So it's different than what I heard.
Oh, I see. Kind of Japanese writing is a combination of Chinese characters and these two Japanese alphabets. That's the Japanese
Interesting.
writing. Yeah.
Very interesting. Perhaps one day I'll make it all the way over to Japan and discover a little more for myself.
Yeah. But don't worry. So most of the public board has English uh, kind of right notice too. For example, the direction or on the road or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would need a little help because
Mhm.
the accent of Japanese is something that I find would
Mhm.
be difficult for me to
Yeah.
recreate. I'm sure my
Mhm.
accent would be awful. Is your
Mhm. Mhm.
there are tones, right? Or no? Is that only Chinese?
Yeah. Japanese is said a pitch-based language. English is said a stress-based language. So Japanese sound is pronounced almost the same strength. So for me, to distinguish, weakly stressed sounds in English was very difficult to listen. So, and Japanese almost all words end in vowel. So a lot of English words are speaking in Japanese nowadays. But maybe some more words are pretty sounds pretty different from original English sounds. Like mileage. Mileage means mileage.
Mm, ah,
Mileage.
yeah,
Mileage doesn't make sense in English at all. Yeah, and
funny.
mm, and other thing. Sorry. For example, street, like a Broadway street or something like that. And if the Japanese says street and storito, so additional vowel appears in the end.
Ah, I
Two
see.
sounds change to to.
Whoa, cool.
Maybe,
Very cool.
sorry, that's a kind of a rule of how Japanese applied the English sounds in Japanese.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very awesome. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
And since we have a few viewers and
Mhm.
possibly people who will be watching this in the history, let's do a little reading of some of the tips in that document. So on the bottom of the document where we stopped last class, we have a bunch of tips. I think there's about 20 tips for TOEFL test taking and test taking in general. And we're going to read a few of them. Aka, will you read number 3 for us that I'm screen sharing right now?
Okay. Run academic English. TOEFL is used for a different purpose than other ESL tests. The TOEFL measures your ability to succeed in American university or college. Other English-speaking countries also require TOEFL scores as a prerequisite for admission. You don't have to know about the business world as you do in the TOEIC test. Instead, you should concentrate on studying language that you would hear and see on campus and in the classroom. In other words, you should read textbooks, encyclopedias, journals, research articles rather than advertisements and resumes. You won't need to know any background information about certain subjects, but it will help you to become familiar with the presentation and language used in academic material. You should also watch modern television and movies if you have a friend who goes to an English university. Go to class with him as often as you can. Borrow his books and hang out with his friends. Mm.
And do you think that that's reasonable advice?
Yeah, I think so. Right after I came back to Japan, I took TOEIC exam, and it
Oh,
was a
wow, you've
higher.
taken everything.
Yeah, but the TOEFL and TOEIC and Japanese English proficiency, three tests only. Yeah, and it was the highest score uh, in my TOEIC history. So
Do you
after
think it's a
that,
little easier than the other two?
I didn't feel anything, but the result was the highest. So I thought my American experience, 24 hours English tuition or hanging out around with my roommate or friends on campus, yeah, uh, was very helpful to score up the TOEIC.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. You're a real test expert.
But that's just three types: TOEFL, TOEIC, and Japanese English proficiency test. Yeah,
Awesome.
and
Wow.
I heard TOEIC is popular only in Japan, probably or South Korea. Not so much.
Really?
Yeah, actually, some students don't know what TOEIC is. Only the Asian students know that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's weird how every country has their own preferences, and of
Mm,
course, the U.S. requires TOEFL.
mm,
But the student that was here earlier was telling me
mm,
that he's trying to immigrate to Australia, and
Mm,
they require either the
mm,
IELTS or the TOEFL for
mm,
immigration. I
mm.
thought that was
Yeah,
interesting.
because TOEIC focus on the kind of business and daily life, not on academic life or academic English. And the words appears in TOEIC is relatively easy. Maybe students who came here on Barbary, they know every word appears on TOEIC.
Yeah, for sure. We have a lot of pretty advanced students here.
Mm,
When I first started teaching, it was actually difficult to adjust to because I was used to teaching in Brazil. So a beginner in an English class would be
mm,
someone who spoke very little English. We'd be
mm,
going over really simple things like the present tense conjugations.
mm,
And then when I started teaching on verbling, I would make classes, some for beginners, some for intermediate. But my
mm,
beginner classes were really, really simple. And I would have
mm,
students who joined and they'd be like, what I would have previously considered as advanced.
mm,
So they'd come into class and we'd go through all my material for the class in like 5 minutes and they would think it was super easy. And then the rest of class, I'd be like, oh, shoot, what are we going to talk about now? So I had to adjust my standards to the really high level of verbling students.
mm.
All right, let's read one more. Can you read number 6 for us?
Okay, a new student appears. Radolf came.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Sorry. They used to ping me sometimes, but now it doesn't do that anymore. Rodolfo, welcome to class.
Hi teacher, good morning. Can I ask
Good
you
morning.
can I ask you a favor?
Yeah, sure.
I need an advice because I'm gonna have an interview for my visa in like 2 hours.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
any advice can you say me?
Well, that is really exciting. So you're coming to the US, I would imagine?
Yeah, I'm going to US in October.
Wow, excellent. Well, of course, I've never been through one of those interviews, but I think they're pretty standard. They're just looking for any reason why you might want to stay there illegally. So I guess probably just talk positively about all of the many things you have here, your job, your family, and that kind of thing, because really the only thing they're looking for is if someone does not have a lot of attachment to their country, like
Okay.
say someone who doesn't have children and doesn't have a job in the country that they live in,
Mhm.
that's not exactly a really good thing because then they might come to the US and stay and say, "Hey, it's great here.
Yeah,
I'm not going back
that's
home."
yeah I know, but I don't have children. I just
Oh,
have my job. I have a job, but I don't know. I'm a
well, I
little
think
afraid.
I'm confident. I mean, I know that it's really stressful. These kinds of things are really stressful, but
Yeah.
I think it will be easier than you imagine. Aka, what do you think? Do you have any advice to give Rodolfo?
I had the interview to get a student visa. In my case, interview asked me, where will you stay in the U.S. and which university will you enter in the U.S. And that's it. Or yeah, and that's it. And the interviewer said, thank you. So yeah, be confident and saying your statement clearly and check your document again because the regulation is pretty strict. You need to prepare all documents is necessary for the American Embassy or Consulate Office.
Okay, thank
And
you,
Aka,
guys.
did you have to travel far for this interview, or was it near where you live?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Um, well, sometimes when people are doing these interviews, they have to travel a very long way. Rodolfo, are you going to have to travel for this interview, or is it going to be near where you
Oh,
live?
it's near of my home, like 50 minutes on bus. Uh,
Excellent. That's lucky.
yeah, so I
You don't
can
have to go
go.
way out.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
just have to be 15 minutes before my my interview, and
Awesome.
It's in like 2 hours, so I have time to go.
All right. Well, I will be thinking of you. Good luck. Bring
And
a lucky
every,
charm to give yourself a little more confidence.
everyone say me that I have to be dressed fancy. Uh,
Well, I think dressing well won't hurt you. That's a good idea, I think. But, don't overdo it. You don't need a business suit or anything like that.
oh, okay, good formally.
Do you have your outfit picked out?
My what?
Your outfit? Your clothes?
Oh, not yet.
All right.
But I
Aka,
have
what
an
did you wear
idea.
to your interview?
I just wear the casual clothes. That's shorts, not so kind of strange one, just an ordinary wear, which university student wears. But maybe a suit. I'm not sure the wear. But kind of.
Yeah.
mm,
Just try to avoid like
ah,
stained
yeah.
clothes or like
And
rags.
yeah, to enter the consulate or his embassy, you need body check is pretty strict.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
don't have to take
yeah,
anything of cell phone or nothing of like guns.
yeah. Even I left my pet bottle tea yeah in front of the gate of the consulate office.
Oh my gosh.
It happened to me. Yeah.
That's crazy. Really strict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what are you doing to prepare, Rodolfo?
Well, I'm going to take uh, all the documents that the consul asked me, and I have, uh, how can I say it, extra documents for show them my job, uh, my salary, um, my my oath on my job, and all that kind of things. My credit card and I don't know how to say it, and statement of my credit card of my last 3 years.
Wow. They're really looking into every detail.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and since this is a TOEFL class, Rodolfo, would you mind reading one more tip for any of the viewers watching who are preparing for the TOEFL?
Okay. Build of your stamina. The TOEFL test takes a long time to write. If you are taking the paper-based test, it will take you about 2.5 hours. The IBT is much longer. You can expect to be at the computer for 4 hours. Many students have an attention span of about 2 hours. This is the maximum length of most classes. After this amount of time, performance starts to weaken. If you keep your study sessions to 1 or 2 hours, your brain will not be prepared to work for 4. Start off with your short study sessions and work up to longer ones. It is be absolutely necessary that you get a good night's sleep before this test. You cannot afford to be tired.
Awesome. And next one I think applies to Rodolfo's situation.
So I have problem with my
It's
connection.
good for visa interviews.
So you
Aka,
have
can
to
you do one before we go?
you
Okay.
have to press.
Oh, sorry, Rodolfo. We heard you okay. Thanks for reading.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh?
Arrive prepare. No, should I read number 7?
Sorry.
Hmm?
Yes. Yes,
Pardon?
go ahead.
Okay. Arrive prepared. If you arrive at the test center with all of the things you need, you will feel calm and ready. When you are nervous, your memory does not work as well. Make sure you know exactly how to get to the test center and where you can park. Bring the correct amount of money for parking. If you are writing the paper-based test, you should have a number of pencils, a pencil sharpener, and few erasers that don't smudge. It is also important that your identification looks valid. If you have had problems with your ID before, make sure to bring a backup photo. Don't forget any paperwork that ETS sends you to prove that you have registered.
Thank you very much. All right. So that's pretty much all the tips we're going to go over for this class. And again, if you have questions or comments, message me on Facebook or on Verbling. And I want to thank you both for joining and helping us go through some of this material.
Thank
Do
you
you guys
very
have any
much.
other questions or comments before we leave?
No, teacher, that's all. Thank
No?
you.
Rodolfo, good luck.
Yeah. Good luck for
Thanks.
Adolf.
Thank you,
Bye.
Aka. Bye.
I think you're welcome. Bye. Thank you.
See ya.